Welcome. And today we have a different perspective on self-care with Grand Canyon University's K-12 development. So excited to have our resident expert with us today, Britt Adams, who has spent almost a decade working with education in social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices. We are so blessed to have her at Grand Canyon University as an expert with our Canyon Professional Development team that works very closely with social emotional learning and all things, dare I say, self-care, because this is a different perspective on self-care. So let's dive right in. As I said before, we're GCU's Canyon Professional Development, PD with Purpose. This is our team. We're thrilled to have everyone working alongside of us to make this happen for you. So to jump right in, I'd like you, Britt, to set the stage for our learning today.
Great. Well, thanks. I'm happy to be here. And the quote that we're going to start out with is, "It's not enough to be busy. The question is, what are we busy about?" Today, we're going to kind of look at self-care, and not in the typical way that we're used to hearing about self-care. I'm not going to tell you to exercise or eat right. We're going to dive into a couple of things that I think will be exciting and really easy to do, and will be thought-provoking. So
I like it. So a different perspective on self-care, learning how to increase energy and combat exhaustion. Well, I know that we can all use that, especially in these teacher professions as we help our students and our staff, kind of move through the everyday life of what is education. Our objectives today will be focused mainly on relationships, creativity, and the yes budget. Britt, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the yes budget, because when I say yes, I go, really? So I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Let's jump in. Tell me a little bit more about service professions and why this is such an important topic today.
Well, we hear a lot with service professions that we have to be really diligent about practicing self-care. And education is that. It's a service profession. We are helpers. We got into the profession because we wanted to serve. We love kids. We want to, feel like we're contributing to our communities and to society at large. But with that comes this sort of like burnout or exhaustion from constantly giving and giving and giving. So one of the things that it's always helpful to sort of, you know, understand and kind of take stock of the fact that we are in a helping profession, and we got into it for a reason. And I think sometimes we can lose sight of the reason why we got into it. But even just acknowledging we got into it because we wanted to help, and we want to contribute, but we also have to understand that there's limits to that contribution we can make without completely exhausting ourselves. So in serving others, we're also serving ourselves, but sometimes we can lose sight of that. We can lose sight of the fact that we are getting filled emotionally by the work that we're doing, because sometimes it could be a never ending list of things to do or people to help. And so we get burnt out and exhausted along the way. So
Oh, the never ending list, the never ending list. That is what I seem to factor into my life on a daily basis. So how do relationships, maybe I have too many relationships. Tell me more about that.
well, I think at the base level, you know, really our whole lives are relationships. We have personal relationships, we have friend relationships, romantic relationships, work relationships, and really we're wired to connect. That's really why we exist. We exist to connect with people, and we spend 24/7 connecting aside from being asleep. But part of the thing that sometimes is hard when you're in a helping profession is that the amount of relationships and then the type of relationships can determine whether or not you are keeping some balance in your life or getting really burnt out, overwhelmed, or exhausted. So we're going to talk about relationships and being really mindful of what relationships we have in our life, how they are benefiting us or not benefiting us, and then taking stock of that and seeing if there's some decisions we have to make around the relationships we have. One thing we know is that healthy relationships or healthy connections actually can be a buffer against life stresses. So having good relationships in our life is actually really key to healthy emotional, or I should say strong emotional health. The problem is sometimes we don't always realize that some relationships we have really kind of zap us, or they are constantly kind of taking And we're not, so we're spending more time in relationships like that and less time in relationships that are actually really beneficial to us. So a couple of things I think that are key in terms of self-care is that we're already spending time in relationships. So we can really add a layer of self-care if we're intentional about spending time in relationships that are healthy and that are good for us and that are mutually beneficial. So mutually beneficial means picking a relationship in your life that you want to increase some time with, but it has to be a good relationship. It has to be a relationship where you are spending time investing in someone else, but that you also feel that reciprocated to you, that they also spend time investing in you. And that there's a consistency to it. There's, you're connecting on a consistent basis. Um, you're meeting halfway. For example, if you decide to meet for coffee, you need to pick a relationship that may drive the full distance to you at some point, and then you drive the full distance to them. It can't be a relationship that you have to go the full way all the time. That's not a mutually beneficial or consistent um, or equitable relationship. That's so those are the keys in finding sort of a relationship in your life that you feel like you can increase time with. It just can't be a relationship that takes more than it gives. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I'm thinking about my mother, and I love her dearly, but there are times where, the relationship really isn't mutually beneficial, yet I don't have a choice, this is my mother,
That's right.
and, so how do I so what you're saying is that I need to find a mutually beneficial relationship, that one may not be it, but as much as I can have it be mutually beneficial, the better it is. So, for example, in this case, I can't ask my mother to come to me all the time, but occasionally, right? Maybe occasionally I can say, you know what, how about Saturday morning you come to me and all the rest of the week I come to you.
Yeah,
That
that's exactly right. And the thing is that you're right. We have relationships we can't get rid of, right? We have coworkers we can't get rid of. We have kids we can't get rid of. We have
students.
students that yeah, exactly, we're forced to be in relationship with people. The key here, and this is where the self-care piece comes in, is am I spending more time in relationships that suck the energy, or and am I being intentional about adding or carving out time for ones that don't do that? So you're right. Like your mother may take more than she gives, right? And depending on the age of your mom, that's very true for a lot of us, right?
Right.
But it's managing the amount of time we're spending in relationships that maybe aren't mutually beneficial um, or 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 feel equitable to us.
Got it. And I have to say, I love my mother. If she's watching this, I love you, mom. It's hard sometimes, and I think it's really good to say it out loud because it allows me to realize I'm spending so much time in this helper profession that I have to dial it back just a little bit to take care of myself or fill my own well, as we say. So speaking of filling my own well, your next topic is creativity. Okay, so when I'm exhausted of all that relationship talk, right, where I'm trying to be mutually beneficial, I don't know about creativity, Britt. What is this all about?
Yeah, so research has actually shown that creative outlets for people actually can minimize depression or depressive symptoms with people. So a lot of times what comes with like a burnt out or exhausted person is a lack of energy or just sort of uh, not wanting to participate in extra things. We're just tired, right? We just kind of want to zone out and do nothing. And so our downtime can either be nothing, TV or something like that, or we can kind of add in this element of like a creative expression. And it actually is shown that it does things in the brain that increase endorphins, which increase happy feelings, elevate our mood. So in our downtime when we're practicing kind of just unwinding or taking some time for self-care, that if we're actually intentional about adding a creative piece into our life, that it actually does things in our brain. So creative expression can be any number of things. It can be, I mean, simply putting your headphones in and listening to music while you do house chores, or actually playing music, getting behind your piano for 10 minutes even. You're creating sound, you're creating something that's enjoyable. Art, gardening, cooking, baking, anything that kind of has a like a something where you are creating and expressing something that you did. or
So I
made.
find this fascinating because the other day I was actually, I play the guitar, but it's been a long time since I've picked up the guitar. And I feel like so often it's just that I just don't have time to do that. And what you're saying is that I could actually make more time in my schedule if I took time to play the guitar, have that creative expression, because it'll increase endorphins. And here's the cool thing that happened when I started playing. My son was started playing the piano. I said, "Hey, mom, let's have a jam session." All of a sudden, I had no idea that he was interested in playing with me, right? He's a teenager. So it's like, oh, I'm not that cool. But I guess I started to become cool when I was playing. So this whole concept of creativity is really interesting. And when I'm exhausted from those relationships, being able to feed myself in that sense sounds great. And you know what I like about it is that it's not necessarily exercise, but it is movement.
That's right.
So I like that
That's right.
concept.
And if you look at like if you have 30 minutes a day where you kind of just get to unwind, you're going to get more out of that 30 minutes of a creative outlet than you would of other types of downtime like TV or even reading. Because the effects of it are lasting longer than that 30 minutes. So do you see what I'm saying? Like there's physiological things that happen in your body that last longer than that 30 minutes. So you're getting an actually more effective use of 30 minutes if you add in a creative expression. The other thing is that we all had hobbies growing up. That's what, like, childhood is so fun because you really are spending time in creativity a lot, right? You learn a musical instrument, you take art classes, you sign up for dance classes, and we kind of lose some of that as we enter into adulthood. But those are the things that actually kind of keep that youthful, vibrant energy. Those endorphins, we keep them kind of pumping through our system, and we're able to just connect to something that really brings us a lot of joy. So it's a great way to practice self-care.
Awesome. All right. Well, say yes to creativity. What's
Yes.
what's the yes budget all about? This is intriguing to me because when I hear self-care, Britt, I hear say no, practice your no. You can't do that. You can't. And you're saying, definitely, play the guitar. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have time for that. But it rings true what you say about, even reading. When I've been at work all day and I'm exhausted, it's hard for me to focus on whatever it is that I'm reading. So if I were able to create a little bit and then find a yes budget. Does it help me find my yes budget? What are you talking about here?
Well, yes, budget is interesting. And the first two things that we talked about, the relationships and the creativity, those are the easy ones. So I do want to kind of preface this section of going, this one's going to be a little bit more um, challenging, and challenging in the way that it really requires some self-reflection. We got to figure out some things in order to really have an effective yes budget. But the basis behind a yes budget is that helpers, like most of us in education, in the service profession, we love to say yes. And the reason we love to say yes is because we got into the profession to help. So why would we get into it and then say no, right? We love to say yes. And most of us would think that we have an infinite amount of yeses. But the problem is that we have a finite amount of time. And so you can see how those two things are kind of, they're in opposition of each other. If we have a finite amount of time and an infinite amount of yeses, we're going to overcommit. We're going to say yes to things we really don't want to do. We're going to say yes to things we should have said no to. And then we don't have time to spend in relationships or creative expression. So a yes budget is really simply looking at our time and figuring out how many yeses we actually have to give and not giving more than we actually have time for.
Okay, so I'm one person. I have 40 kids in my class. Okay, that's high. That's a high public school. But let's just say I mean there's just more kids than I can take care of per se. But yet this is what we do. So if I say yes to every one of them, there's just not that many yeses. That's what you're saying.
That's
So
right.
being very selective about your yeses. But I have to tell you, Britt, I'm kind of I say yes all the time. It's like a disease. Why do you think I do that?
Well, there's a number of reasons why we say yes. There's a number of things that kind of stem from maybe how we were brought up, the upbringing we had in our kind of family of origin, the relationships we currently have in our life, and what type of people they are, and what we're trying to gain from our yeses. So this is kind of a very broad approach to this, but I feel like there's really four types of people, generally speaking. Now, if we're really honest, there's probably some of these attributes in all of us, but we all have kind of a dominant lean to us. There's the people pleaser, the person who wants to say yes because it feels good to say yes. They want to make people happy, right? We have the overachiever. We have the person that says yes because they know they can do it. They can do it well, probably better than a lot of people around them. Their brain and who they are thrives on just being busy. They like that feeling, so they are an overachiever. They do everything well and then some. And then we have the fear of missing outer. This is really a very social person. They love being around people. They're energized by people, but they
FOMO.
but they
Yeah.
overcommit themselves because they don't want to miss out on anything. And then we have the pushover. We have the pushover, and this one probably has a lot of the top three in there. But really, the biggest thing is that they just can't say no. They're afraid of hurting people's feelings, and they're worried about what people think of them if they say no. So, um,
I feel like I have some of that. And
yes,
I mean, I'm definitely more of the people pleaser. I think I'm the youngest of five. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody look at me, so I get that, but I have some overachieverness and FOMO. And the pushover does that. I'm like, oh, why do I do this to myself after I've overtaxed myself? So
yeah.
this is really important. So just to focus on what resonates with me first, and then once I know and I'm aware a little bit, then I can start to really say yes or no when I want to. I don't know.
Yeah, we've got to figure out why you're saying yes. And sometimes we say yes because we want to, and there's a very intentional purpose. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about figuring out why we say yes when we mean no or when we should have said no. So it's like figuring out the why behind what is motivating the yeses. And I would venture to guess most of us, we may be one of those different kind of yes people in different areas of our life. In
With
my
different
professional
people in
life,
our lives, like my mom,
yes,
right?
yes. In my professional life, I may have more of the, overachiever or the people pleaser piece. In my home life with my kids, I may tend to be more of the pushover. So I think sometimes just the area of our life, a different side of us may come out and the why behind our yeses could be different. So really it's kind of just being self-reflective and figuring out why exactly are we saying yes when we mean no or
Mm,
when we want to say no.
very powerful.
Yeah, a couple of reasons why we say no, right? Here's a few examples. We feel like we have no choice. This can be very common in the professional world. We feel like our bosses asked us to do something or coworkers asked us, and we just feel like we have no choice.
Mhm.
We feel guilty. We're doing it because we're motivated by something. We don't want the feeling of how we're going to feel with the no. We don't want to be rude. We want to seem very agreeable. We don't want to seem lazy. The overachiever is deathly afraid of seeming lazy, right? Lazy is not what they want to be even associated with. The fear of the missing out, they're worried that they'll regret something. They'll regret saying no. They'll regret saying no to an event
Um,
or a social gathering. Like, what if something amazing happens and I'm not there, right?
right.
And the pushover, they're just a pushover. There's no real reason. It's just they have gotten so accustomed to saying yes that no doesn't even really enter their mind. It just is a yes.
So it's almost like a habit. Like
Yes.
you've habitually said, yes, it's who I am, it's what I do. And we have to remember that we can change the things that are not working for us in our lives.
Right.
I mean, I get that it's hard, much easier said than done, but I really enjoy this concept. So the concept of the yes budget is really, it's a budget. There's only so much to go around. So you have to start to become pretty picky about what you're saying yes to. And some of those things are non-negotiables, right? Like
That's right.
your boss asks you to do X, Y, or Z, you got to do it.
You're
Or,
saying yes. Exactly.
parents are emailing you in the school system, you've got to respond to parents. These are your clients, these are your
That's right.
customers. So,
And
okay,
and and really it's not about saying no to everything or thinking that you need to in order to create more time. It's really being mindful of what is in your time, what's in your week, what's in your schedule for the day. What do you have to say yes to? Then what does it leave open to potentially say no to? And of those things, what's important to you? What is worth saying yes to and what's not worth saying yes to?
So I feel like what's going to happen with me is that I'll start to figure out what really is my priority. And folks, if you're in a position where you're just not being fulfilled, that might come right out like, oh boy, everything here I'm really wanting to say no to. Maybe it's time to reconsider, that might be hard because it might be like, I got 4 more years to retirement. So, you got to focus in on what are the positives in your world and prioritize those positives. So that's a really cool
And
idea.
the challenging thing is too, is that oftentimes, especially in education, a lot of times we're saying yes to a lot of things that really matter to us. So really taking a look at that and going, well, it matters on some levels, but not on others. It's like a yes for a lot of reasons, but then there's some reasons where maybe I should say no because the outcome may affect me negatively. So it's not even a matter of some things we don't want to say yes to. It's that some things really, if it's not fulfilling, if it's not checking all of our boxes, then that could potentially be something we really just need to say no to so we can create some space to practice self-care. We have to, as a helper, as somebody in a service profession, we have to figure out how to take care of ourselves, and we don't have an infinite amount of time. So it really sometimes boils down to it's just a necessity to figure out some area that we just have to say no to.
Whew. That's no pressure, no pressure
I
there.
told you this one was going to be harder.
Okay, all right. So how do I deliver this no as you so like there's man, that just freaks me out just seeing the thumbs down, right? Like, oh, that's my fear of missing out coming out, these things that, I'm not sure I have in my world and now I know I have them. Okay. What are your tips and tricks on saying delivering that no?
Yeah, I think recognizing that no is very hard, right? We have to acknowledge the fact that it's not easy. If it was easy, we'd be saying it more, right? So I think, it is scary and sometimes, the fear can prevent us from even getting started. So I think, the easiest way to get started is one, figuring out the why behind your yes, figuring out what it is that's motivating you to say yes, because then that actually will help you figure out how to say no. I know that seems weird, but it really will. It'll help you figure out what you're being motivated by. It's very simple. It's taking a look at the things you have in your life or in your week, in your day, and deciding what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, what you don't want to do after you've decided what you just is absolutely mandatory that you say yes to, right? Those things that you have no option to take off your plate. So you're really working with, you know, only a section of the things you have in your life, right? Some of them are non-negotiable, but you're looking at the negotiable things and then you're kind of taking stock, taking inventory, right? You're creating the lines on your budget. What is it that I just don't want to do? What is the things that I actually want to do, but I really shouldn't do because it prevents me from X, Y, or Z? Um, what is the things I'm just saying yes to that I just flat out don't want to do? Like, and I'm miserable every time I have to go do it because I should have said no,
And
right?
you
Like,
know what I love about this, Britt, is that you said start with what you want to do, right? Like the yeses, right? So I love my yoga practice.
mhm.
So I'm going to immediately say, yes, that's a non-negotiable for me, even though that's not my boss telling me to do yoga. So like to start in your personal world might be a good idea. Start
Yeah.
figuring out what are you saying yes to and why? Like, because I feel so much better after I do that. So I really, really love this. Okay. Final thoughts on delivering the no.
So here's the no. Here's the thing with no is that you don't start delivering a no to the scariest person in your relationship world. You start telling somebody no that you kind of baby steps. You start with someone that you feel like you're going to be able to one, get it out of your mouth, that the world's not going to blow up and end, and that that person's still going to love you even if you delivered a no. You start small and you start slow and you figure out you say no a time or two and you get more confident in the fact that when you say no, the world doesn't actually end and everything is okay and that person still loves you, and you work your way from there. You don't My advice would be don't start with the scariest person to say no to and haul off a no and then, duck and cover and see how it goes, right?
Oh yeah.
So you do have to be mindful about, who in your life do you need to start saying no to? And then of those people, pick the easiest one that you feel like you're going to be able to actually utter the words out of your mouth.
I, I
That's
love
how to
it.
get started.
And even if it's hard like that, you don't have to explain why. You can just say, I have plans, and
That's right.
there's no obligation in explaining why you have to say no. That's hard for me. I always have to justify. So I'm going to really work on that. Oh my goodness. You have just given us so much to think about. What are our next steps in all three of these areas: relationships, creativity, and delivering that no?
Well, it really does come down to the yes budget, right? Because that helps us organize our time. So while there's some tangible things in terms of connecting with some relationships, spending some time in creative outlets, we really have to create space for those things to happen, right? For us to be able to connect relationally with people and to be able to have time in the creative outlets. So, I mean, I would say, take a look at the relationships you have in your life. Are there ones that you're spending more time with than you want to? And then look at the relationships that you really wish you could spend more time with and you haven't made the priority to kind of connect. Take a look at that and figure out, if there's somewhere in your schedule in the next week or 2 weeks that you can plug something in and really just kind of take the step to identify the person that you'd like to kind of connect with more and try to get something scheduled, even if you start with a 10-minute phone call or a 20-minute coffee loop around the track on your school campus, or whatever it is, some small increment of time. Just pick the person, figure out who that is, get something on the calendar. In terms of a creative outlet, I think just think through maybe what in your life that you used to love to do that you just haven't made time for, and figure out how you can incorporate that. And sometimes it's hard to carve out specific time for that. So maybe figure out things that you're already doing. Is there a way you can bring a creative element into it? Is there, you already have to cook dinner. Can you, try a type of cuisine you've never tried, experiment with something new? That's creativity. That's creating something new for you if you enjoy cooking. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. Thank you. And
Yeah.
then try saying no. Maybe I'll just give it a go, like baby steps.
Well,
You
I
know,
would say at the very least, take some kind of stock of yourself and have those kind of just conversations internally with yourself about what you think may be motivating your yeses. I think that's a good place to start,
okay.
because I think it will probably automatically tell you the people in your life that you're saying yes to more often than you should be, just identifying that person or what's motivating the yeses. So I would say maybe just take a look at that. If you feel like there's, after you've kind of identified that, if you feel like there's some space for some things you're willing to try to say no on, or really look to, yeah, narrow down a person that in the next, week or two, you're going to kind of attempt to pull back a yes from, then that's a good place to start. So,
That's great.
yeah, identification at this point is like the first step.
Awareness, right?
Yes,
Awareness.
that's
So
right.
I think my takeaway would be, it's just like if I were to challenge myself in my relationships, I keep bringing up my mom. So I'm going to go back to her. And I actually love connecting with my mom, but
Mhm.
when I'm too spent, I don't connect. And so
That's
I'm
right.
thinking to myself, maybe say no a few more times so that my yeses mean something a little bit more. And then I can even mix in that creativity with my mom. Like, hey, why don't you come over? I'm going to play the guitar. Kate's going to play the piano. Might be a lot of fun. I like this. I'm going to start connecting that. It's not going to be easy. I know this. I get it. But, because I have this narrative that's been going on with my mom needs X, Y, and Z. She probably just needs that connection and knows that I'm not able to give it to her because I haven't said no to the 10 million other things that are on my calendar. So
Yeah,
really, really great. Britt, thank you so much for being with us today.
you're
You
welcome.
are so fantastic, your advice, your wisdom, and we'd love to have you back whenever you have some time.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it. And I want everyone to know that we do not take anything we do lightly. Our why, you mentioned, Britt, figuring out why you do what you do. And we do that all the time here at Canyon PD. We are here to empower, educate, and inspire our community so that they take action to fulfill their purpose and to serve others. So thank you, community, for being here with us. And please, if you got something out of today's topic, we'd love for you to subscribe now for more free PDs. So definitely do that. And don't forget, connect with us. We've got all kinds of new content coming out via Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and connect at our website. Also, we'd just be happy to bring customized PD to you and your community wherever you are. So feel free to fill out our inquiry form. And until next time, this has been your Canyon PD's Wednesday webinar. Thank you. And thank you to Britt Adams for all of your expertise. Until next time, thanks all.